Hello, mate. You all right?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, not so bad, thanks. How you been
Good.
during all this?
Yeah, it's been good. It's been all right since we've gone back to work and gone back onto the back into the club training. So that's been a welcome distraction because obviously sitting in's been quite difficult. Same for everyone, but there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. Just like I said, being out and being back in training has been good.
Yeah, it's about time, really, isn't it? Although it looks like it might go back to some sort of lockdown if these protests carry on. To be honest.
Well, yeah, I know. Yeah, they seem to be all over the UK now as well, don't they? So
Yeah,
yeah, fingers crossed that it doesn't put us back at all.
yeah, definitely.
We may as well start with sort of leading on from that with what you're sort of up to now. So for those that don't know, you're goalkeeper coach at Birmingham. Is that right?
Yeah, I've been the goalkeeping coach at Birmingham now for 2.5 years now. Previously, it was at Middlesbrough, and previous to that, Leeds United. So yeah, it's been 4 years now since the transition from playing into coaching, and so far it's been good. I've enjoyed it, and just working day to day with the goalkeepers at Birmingham City. So it's been really good.
Must be quite nice because you've not really sort of had any time out of it. You sort of retired from playing, and you were almost straight in, weren't you?
Yeah. I was lucky enough to go on till 38. I had a little period out. I finished at Bournemouth, and then I had an opportunity then to just play at Crawley in League Two. I was debating on whether to stop then because at the time, Eddie Howe mentioned coaching to me and about staying at the club in a coaching capacity. But I just wanted to carry on because I still felt fit. I still felt I had a lot to offer, even though I was 38. And I just I sort of wanted to finish on my own terms, if that makes sense. I didn't want to be retired. I wanted to do it myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then the opportunity came to play, and I played for, I think, September. It was a while before I actually signed there. I was without a club for a couple of months and just keeping fit. And then I went to Crawley and then played there till January. And then I had a period out for about 2 or 3 months. And then I spoke to Gary Monk, who got the Leeds job as manager. He spoke to me about there was an opportunity, a vacancy there as the first team goalkeeping coach, and offered me it. And then he gave me 24 hours to make a decision because I was still sort of umming and ahhing about whether to carry on playing. I had a thing in my head for a while that I wanted to still be registered as a player at 40. I had that as a bit of an ambition of mine. And again, I was in good shape and good nick, and felt I could do that. But I had that opportunity, and then just sitting down and talking with my wife, and obviously always knew the next step for me would be coaching. It was too good an opportunity to turn down, going to a club like Leeds United as the first team goalkeeping coach, which was my first job. It was sort of out of the frying pan. I'd never been given that responsibility before, and it was just a case of speaking to experienced coaches, people that I know in the game from over the years, and learning on the job, which was great. And it was a great opportunity. I've known Gary for a long time, and he had the confidence in me to do it. So it was a fantastic learning curve for me, and one I'm always grateful for.
Huge club as well, as you say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I had a brief stint there as a player. I was at Crystal Palace, and I got an injury in a reserve game. I can't remember who we were playing. I came out on the ball, and someone's just thought my face was a football and just smashed me straight in the face, broke my nose, my jaw, my teeth knocked out.
Wow.
Literally. So I was out. I know the date because it was Valentine's Day that I played. I came home. And the wife thought, obviously, I turned into the Elephant Man because my nose was facing the other way. My front teeth were all out. Yeah, I looked a bit of a state, and she wasn't going out with me for a few nights after that. Put it that way. So the obviously I had the operation in London, and Neil Warnock, who was the manager at the time, said to me that, by the time you get back, and even doing some CV work, some cardiovascular work, and then just doing some work with the footballs again with the goalkeeping coach, by the time that comes around, we'll be looking at nearly the middle of May. The season was finishing at the end of May. So basically I sort of thought, well, this is my season sort of done. Even when I come back, I've probably got 2 or 3 games. And at the time, Julian Speroni was playing in goal, and he was outstanding at the time, and it was difficult for me to get into the side. So in my head, I sort of had that this was my season over. And then I was literally, obviously, in my rehab with a month to go, not really, thinking, about summer holidays. To be honest, I was thinking about, going away with the family, and I got a call from Simon Grayson at Leeds United and asked me to come in on loan, which I said to him at the time that I wasn't fit and I wasn't ready, and and the club wouldn't let me. He then said he wasn't really fussed. He said to do the rehab at Leeds, and he was interested in taking me for next season. He just wanted me to get around the place to get to know me, for me to get to know the club, and if I got myself fit. He even said about playing me in the playoffs, which would have been, crazy because I hadn't played for so long. But obviously at the time I had the experience, with some of my time at Southend, I'd won that league, and achieved all I did in that league. So I was quite confident if I got myself fit that he would consider playing me in the last game or two and the playoffs. So I went to Leeds then, and obviously then I realised the magnitude of the club and how big the club was, and that was in League One at the time. Like I said, I was at Crystal Palace, who was a Premier League club now, a top Championship club at the time. And even going to Leeds then, you realised even then it was probably a bigger football club then, and now, as you see them, I think if they get back to the Premier League, they're going to be a real force back in the Premier League in the next few years.
Yeah, I mean, even just to be a football fan, like you want to see the big clubs in the big divisions. And I've been to Leeds as a fan a couple of times, and yeah, it's incredible that they've been outside the top division for as long as they have been.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy to think of a club of that size, and I suppose looking back, even when I was a kid, they were. When they had Vidukas, Harry Kewell, Nigel Martins, these sorts of players, they were top 4, weren't they, challenger for Champions League places. So it's an unbelievable sort of slump and then sort of rise again. So yeah, I completely agree, especially with my links there as well. We all hope that Leeds United can get back into the Premier League where they belong.
Mm. So yeah, let's go way back to the start. We've sort of done the end of your career. Youth team at Southampton, is that right? What sort of standard were they at the time?
Well, obviously it finished. It would be like a Premier League academy now. It was still a great learning curve for me to develop as a goalkeeper. Obviously things have changed, now compared to what they were then in their level of coaching and just the level of coaching off the pitch, tactical awareness, that sort of thing, technical stuff, the social side, the psychological side, now compared to it was then, but it was still a great learning curve for me then and a place to develop Southampton. And I played in the youth team there straight from school at 16. And when I was there was a manager there in the reserves called Dave Merrington, who actually managed the first team for a season and took a real liking to me straight away. And I think after a few months of even just playing with the youth team with the 16, 17-year-olds, he was pulling me in with the reserves back then. So it was a different a different outlook back in 1995, I think it would have been, where now it's all young players and trying to develop young players and get them into the first team as quickly as you can. Where back then it was all experience. Players were all experienced. They were all, the goalkeepers were all 35. I had Dave Besant and Bruce Grobbelaar there who were challenging for the 1 and 2 position.
Wow.
Both 35, one was 36. And the next goalkeeper under that probably would have been about 25, who was playing reserve team football. So I was 17. So even at 17, I was playing in the reserves with players at 25, 26, experience, playing in the Premier League. And it was great for me. Literally, I was at school 6 months before, and, you're coming out playing against Tottenham, and, I remember players there who played in the World Cup. Dimitrescu for Tottenham, was playing for them in a reserve game. You'd go to play Arsenal's, you'd go and play Chelsea's, and, if you weren't playing on the Saturday in the Premier League, you were ultimately playing in the reserves on a Tuesday night. So you're getting to play against these type of players at that age, exposed at a really early age to it, which was fantastic. And that's where my journey started at my hometown club. And I did 2 years. It was an apprenticeship then. YTS it was then. Yeah. It wasn't an academy then. It was a YTS. And then I got a pro contract at 18, so I signed professional at 18 there. And I went on from then, played in the reserves. I was on the bench in the first team in the Premier League. I never got an opportunity to play. But I was on the bench, I think 9 times, 10 times in the Premier League, again, which was fantastic for me as a kid, as I was then. The only problem was it was a revolving door at Southampton at the time. Manager, literally every season a new one came in. When I first went in, and we had Alan Ball, the late great Alan Ball was my manager, who was a brilliant footballing man. Everyone loved him there, and then he left. I think he went to Manchester City. Season after that, Dave Merrington, who was our reserves, was in the first team. So ultimately it was good for me because he was getting me involved in the first team. Season after that, I think someone else, Graham Souness, came in. Season after that, Dave Jones come in. And I think gradually as Dave left, it was Glenn Hoddle. So it was just kept changing. So it was always difficult. And at the time, I was the youngest by, a considerable amount of years. And it was always tough. So I always fell back down the ladder every pre-season, it seemed. So it was frustrating because I always got myself to a good position where each manager at the time thought a lot of me, but every season they seemed to leave and the next one would come in and I would be the young one straight away. It was cast aside and prove yourself again, which was always difficult because I was never the biggest goalkeeper. And obviously competing with these guys straight away, I was young, I was the smallest. I'm interested in these two. Then all of a sudden you sort of, hold on a minute, he's not too bad, and you make your way there. Then the manager leaves, and another one comes in and thinks exactly the same. So it was tough, but something that I had to get on with, and something that I knew that I'd have to fight my whole career if I was going to have one.
Yeah, is that ultimately why you left Southampton though? Lack of opportunities, or just had enough?
It was that. It was tough because more than two managers there said to me that if you were 3 inches taller, I'd play you now. When I was 18, 19, they're telling me they were playing in the Premier League at that early age, which was flattering, but on the other hand was really frustrating because I was young at the time. I was seeing, it wasn't really happening, but you were seeing, young goalkeepers, maybe like Richard Wright, probably at the time at Ipswich, and maybe Paul Robinson. And I felt that I had the opportunity, I had the tools to be able to have that opportunity to go in and do well. But, again, I had this height thing that I wasn't blessed with always coming against me. So, it got to a point then when I wasn't involved, and it was I had a chat with the manager at the time, and he basically said, you know, you need to go out and start your career. And I agreed with him. I didn't really want to sit around at Southampton again. And the only opportunity at the time come along for me to play was Woking in the National League, as it is now, conference back then. And it was a tough one. I actually spoke with Sam Allardyce when he was at Notts County about going to Notts County, but he couldn't promise me to play, so I was desperate to play. So Woking for me at the time was only about 50 minutes on a train from my home in Southampton. So I thought I'd take the opportunity. Again, I did a little bit of research back then even, and realised that all the goalkeepers in that league were all ex-players. You know, Neville Southall was playing in there, Nigel Spinks, some really big names. And I was 21 at the time, 21. And I just thought it was a great opportunity. So I went there and started playing there, and I had to back it up with performances. Also had a goalkeeper there who was very well renowned in the non-league circles that I had to try and overcome. And then I played at Woking, managed to play probably about 30, 40 games there. And after that, I went to Southend, which was where my career kicked off, really.
Yeah. So just quickly going back to Southampton, when you mentioned Graham Souness, it's just reminded me of something. You weren't around when Ali Dyer rocked up, were you?
I was, yeah, I was. I actually played in the same team as him when we played a training match. It was how he said it. It was bizarre because he came in. Obviously, I was with the reserve squad at the time. You also had the youth team reserves and the first team. So I was mainly in with the reserve lads at the time. And this guy come in, and all we heard was he's George Weir's cousin or something.
Yeah, something like that, wasn't it?
Okay. You know, you didn't have the access to, you know, the online platforms that you do now. Obviously, the player's background or the media now that can tell you everything about them. You didn't really have that at the time. So everyone was, I was George Weir's cousin. Okay. So we played a practice match against the first team. So I actually played in the practice match with Ali Dyer. And you're sort of thinking, you know, okay, I was a bit not too sure about him. He didn't look the best on the ball. He looked quick. He looked quite powerful, but I was a bit not sure about this guy. Anyway, the week went on, and he was training with us in the reserves. And then towards the end of the week, I think we were off on a Wednesday. Monday, Tuesday, he trained with the reserves, played in this match with us. We had a Wednesday off. Then on the Thursday, he wasn't in the changing room with us. So I sort of thought he's gone, you know, he's not here. And then we went out, and he was in the first team squad. And you're like, oh, hold on a minute. And then lo and behold, we were playing Leeds United on the Saturday. He was in the squad, which was unbelievable. And he actually got on the pitch. And then he had to be replaced by one of the young lads that was on the bench because he was that bad. So I remember him. I'm sure he was put on the right side of midfield. You know, in a 4-4-2, he played on the right, you know, right midfield, right wing, that sort of thing. And I remember him receiving the ball and running down the channel with it. And this was at the Dell. And he got into a position to put a cross in the box, and he just kicked it into the stand beyond Southampton. And I'm like, you know, it was just like ridiculous. And I think in the end, Graham substituted him for one of the young lads that was in the reserves with us at the time. We had to get him off because I didn't realise it at the time. It was only when I've listened to Graham's comments and a couple of us. I heard Matt Tissier speaking about it a couple of weeks ago. The squad was that thin for a Premier League squad. I didn't realise how thin it was. But it's crazy how even back then that happened. And then, like I said, same as everyone else, he went after that game. We never saw him again. No one knew what happened to him. And then we found out 3 or 4 weeks later that it was some sort of hoax and it was bizarre. But that was probably my first little insight to thinking that you've seen as much as you can see in football. But obviously, over the years, I've seen a lot more than that. So it was my first eye-opener to how crazy the football industry can be at times.
That is crazy, that.
He actually came on for Matt Letizia as well, didn't he? Because he was injured.
I think he did, yeah. I think he did, because I think Tiz was carrying a knock or an injury. So I think he came on for Tiz, and yeah, he got substituted. I don't know how long he got. I think he might have got about 10, 15 minutes. And I think it was a cross that I think he might have knocked a kid that was on his dad's shoulders in the Milton Road end off his shoulders, and that got him subbed. So yeah, it was it was funny. Obviously, in the aftermath, it was funny, but at the time, you were scratching your head thinking, how's this guy got on in the Premier League? It was bizarre.
That's brilliant. So you say you then signed for Southend. Who was it that signed you at Southend?
It was David Webb at the time. I was I'd played against Yeovil on a few occasions. Well, he was manager at Yeovil, and just played well against Yeovil, you know. And I can't remember what I signed. I think I might have signed the rest of the season. I was in another year at Woking. Anyway, it was coming to an end, and I can't remember how I got in contact with him. I don't know if it was through his son, Danny, because Danny was at Southampton. I can't really remember, but I remember I was in Southampton, and my contract was running out, and he invited me to go down to Yeovil at the time. So I went to Yeovil when my contract ran out. It must have been pre-season. And I went there for a day, literally for a day, trained. Then afterwards, he pulled me in the office and just said, I'm not gonna sign you. So I was straight away like, what have I done wrong here? You know, actually, I trained well, and then I went back for. He wants a 6'4" giant, you know, all that. I drove back from Yeovil to my house in Southampton, and all that going from it. He said, I'm not going to sign you. He said, but what I'll do is I'll give you a call in the next week or two. But he said, if anything comes up for you, let me know. So at the time I was a bit like, you know, in McCarthy was like, if something comes up, you know, all that. So I didn't really know the real reason what he was doing, to be honest with you. Then I think it must have been not long after, 2 or 3 days, 4 days later, I see he gets a Southend job. So he literally gets a Southend job. And then I think the next day my phone goes and it's Dave Webb. And then he's sort of down the phone how he was, but he was sort of like saying, that's why I didn't sign you, because I wanted to bring you here. So I know if I'd signed you at Yeovil, I couldn't bring you here. So that's why I didn't take it. It wasn't anything to do with how you were. I would have signed you at Yeovil had I stayed there. But I wanted to bring you here because this was in the pipeline. I just had to sort a few things out. So I want to bring you in here. So I was like, fantastic. It was even better for me because at the time, Southend were in League Two, Yeovil were in the National League. So it was great. So I signed for Dave Webb at Southend. I think Andy Woodman was in goal at the time on loan because Mel Capleton had a broken leg. So Andy Woodman was in goal. And he had to the end of the month, I think, when his contract ran out. And Dave Webb said to me, his loan agreement runs out at the end of the month. Don't care how he does, you're going to play. And again, like I said, I think I was only 21, 22, possibly around about that age. So he was true to his word. I think I had to sit on the bench maybe for a game or two, and then he put me straight in. I think it was Carlisle away. So that was my first experience of first team football, which was a real baptism of fire. First game Carlisle away, probably the furthest place you could ever go. One of those down the years that everyone always had a sore hamstring for, that sort of that one. So yeah, and that was my first game, Carlisle, and we lost 3-1, I think it was. Yeah, that's where it all started for me.
I'm trying to think who were some of the characters in that team. I'm trying to think who was about at that sort of era.
Who was in the team? Well, obviously Kev.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, he was there.
Yeah, and everything.
He was there in the 80s, wasn't he? He was there. So, Kevin Mayer, Phil Whelan, Rob Newman, Martin Carruthers.
Yeah.
Who else would have played then? Dave Lee.
I can't think myself now who some of them were.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the era. I'm trying to.
So long ago. It wasn't the best team, so I can't really remember if I'm honest. But yeah, those are probably just a few I can sort of slightly remember. Yeah, it was yeah, I can't really remember, to be honest with you, that first team that I went into. That was probably 1999, 2000, I think that long. Yeah.
Was it quite a jump from Yeovil to Southend, or not really? I can't imagine it being that big a jump, really. But...
What, as in the level?
Yeah.
Of playing? Well, obviously I didn't play for Yeovil. I had one training.
Sorry, not Yeovil. Woking, sorry.
It felt it, but nothing too great, if I'm honest. You found that in that era, a lot of ex-pros, a lot of even big name ex-pros who were very local to their area, played for their sort of, if you went up and played Southport at the time, I remember playing Southport and it was full of old Liverpool players, old Everton players, towards the end of their careers, offered probably a year, 2 years, to go probably train twice a week and play on a Saturday. So you were playing against players that still had good technical ability, probably not the legs that they did. So you're still playing against those sort of players. And then when you went into League Two, probably they had players that were a bit more dynamic and had a bit more energy, but technically there wasn't a lot of difference. But obviously for me at the time, playing in the Football League as opposed to playing in the national of the conference as it was then, it felt bigger to me because it was the first step and it's where I sort of wanted to be. So, I looked at it and at the time as well, it was full-time football where Woking, the conference for me was training Tuesday and Thursdays, playing on Saturday. I kept myself fit during the week. I actually went in and trained with Portsmouth. Because I'd been released, or I'd left Southampton, so I was training at Woking twice a week. I'd gone in at Portsmouth because my brother was playing there, so they let me go in there and train with the reserves at Portsmouth. So I was keeping fit on a regular basis, but getting my game time. Like now, if I looked at it, was great because that's exactly what I would want from my young goalkeepers now. Would probably be to train full time with me, but go and play. If they could play in the National League, would be great because they're getting game time. So that's effectively what I was doing. So yeah, and again, moving to Southend, full-time football felt real, felt what I wanted. I wanted to train through the week and then to build up to a game at the end of the week, and then have the chaos of Tuesday, Saturday, like we had in those, playing in all the cups and the Football League trophy, those sorts of things. So it was exactly what I wanted. But level wise, yeah, probably I'd probably do it a disservice. It was probably better, yeah.
Because I think that maybe certainly some younger Southend fans may only sort of remember you from kind of that era between 2004 to 2008 kind of time. But, by that time rolls around, you've already been here quite a long time. You actually had 2 spells with the club. Your first spell ended around, was it 2003?
Yeah, probably was. Yeah. Yeah, it was. I think so. 2002, 2003, it would have been. It would have been after probably Rob Newman.
Steve Wignall was the manager, I think.
Yeah, it would have been him. I think he came in towards the end for a bit. But yeah, I think I already played probably 150 odd games, maybe even more by then. But he came in, Steve Wignall, for I can't remember how many games. But yeah, I ended up leaving the club for a bit, to be honest. I think at the time I always heard that he was at Colchester and he wanted to bring a goalkeeper at Colchester in. I already heard this from an agent that had heard this. So I sort of knew my time was coming to an end, but at the time I was in a really dark place because I'd lost my brother around 2001. So I was really going through a tough time leading up to that. And I think he came in. Obviously now you probably get the help you would need. I didn't get any at the time. My mum I had a small family, lost my brother. My mum moved out to Spain with a new husband and my step brother. So I was in the country on my own, really. I didn't really have any family. And I lost my way a little bit. And I think he come in and saw, probably I wasn't living my life right, and saw it as an opportunity to move me out, which what happened. I was then on the cusp of signing at Wimbledon in the Championship. They'd gone into administration and they were keen on signing me. So I was just waiting for Wimbledon to come out of administration before I signed for them. But it was taking forever, it seemed. And then I got a call from someone at Southend Echo, a Bernie friend, spoke to me and asked me what was going on. So I explained the situation, and then he said, "Oh, would you come back?" And then I was a little bit, don't know, maybe. And then Steve Wignall rang me up and said, "No, I want to get you back in. I want to get you back in." So I was a bit, okay. So I ended up re-signing at Southend, coming back in, played me, and then he left. I think he lost his job because at the time I came in, club was struggling. I think they were in the bottom three. I think it was League Two. Must have been League Two.
Yeah.
The bottom three. I came back in, played a couple of games, and then I think he got sacked. And then I think that was when Tilly would have come. I think Steve Tilson would have came. And then obviously I carried on playing, and then sort of it started going really well personally and for the team. It started going really well, and we started heading in the direction that we wanted to.
Yeah. So in that era when Tilly's come in, as I say, it was similar to what we said when we chatted to Kev. Like, so you've been there quite a long time already. Like at that point, when did you sort of start to realise that when certain players were coming in? Because obviously that first, the half season that Tilly was in, we did stay up, had a good run of form to stay up. We got to an LDV final. You know, did you think like, oh yeah, we could do something next season? Which we did, obviously, like go on to win the playoffs the following season.
Yeah, I felt obviously from being at Southend, it was stronger. The level of training, the standard of training went up. It's always hard to predict how you're going to go, each season, but staying up, and then we followed the season up. A few players came in, and I've said this before. I think, with Steve, he got it right, because I think he ended up bringing in players that were just starting to get going, to hit the sort of the start of the peak, if that makes sense. And yeah, I thought, with the players we had, we were capable in that league of achieving something. And personally, I wanted that. I didn't want to be sat in League Two. And speaking around, with the lads, no one else wanted that. And the thing is with me, I'm so fixed on what I was doing. I was working with Leeds United, my goalkeeper coach at the time. I was so fixed on what I was doing. I always thought if I was putting in my performances as a goalkeeper, then it would benefit the team anyway. So I was so fixed on what I was doing, and so had that drive to just, I'm going to sort this out back here, lads. You do the rest, and that sort of thing. So I didn't really pay too much attention to what was going on. I was just focused on what I was doing. And then obviously then you gradually as a team, you sort of get on a roll and get on momentum, and then you're brushing teams aside. You're starting to think, hold on a minute, we could do something here. And yeah, that season in League Two, players were hitting peaks. Players were performing well. We looked fit. We looked sharp. No one was dropping off. So you're starting to think that we could probably achieve promotion here. I think we made the LDV trophy again that year, and then we started it in a bit of a patch where we dropped. I don't know if we dropped into the play. I think we're in the top two. We dropped into the playoffs, and I think we went somewhere like Grimsby on the last day. I think we needed to win, didn't we? We draw 1-1, and then
it still haunts us.
yeah. And I think we dropped into the playoff positions. And then I think, from there, people are saying that, that team that drop out of it on the last day, hit the playoffs, they're going to be so despondent and so down about it that they'd probably end up would be the favourites to win it, even though they were in third position. So we as a team didn't want that. We'd come so far, and see then the playoffs to win that, even at whatever level, League Two, League One, Championship, whatever level we win the playoffs is a great experience. And the only downside to it that it wasn't at Wembley. You seem to get to the final of all these competitions, and none of them were at Wembley. So, but still great memories, and obviously then we sort of start part of probably the best sides of the club has had, to be honest, in the last club history.
Yeah. Did you think as well? We just literally just carried that wave on again, because we go and win the league next year. It was an incredible run.
Yeah, it's funny though, isn't it? How many times that happens? You see it quite a bit.
Yeah.
See it quite happen. Momentum's a massive thing in football. Just adding a few new faces and a little bit more quality. That summer, I think we lost the first game.
Yeah, we did.
We lose the first one, yeah. Something like Bradford City, something like that, I think it was. And then, then I think you start thinking it's a higher level, and we get a couple of wins, and you think, hold on a minute, we're all right here. We could be all right. We had that momentum of promotion the season before, and it was one of those. You could just feel it. You could just feel something was happening, and but obviously we had to back up with performances. And like I said, I think players were hitting their start of their peaks at the right time, and at the time I think the club benefited from that.
Yeah, definitely,
massively. What
was it like, sort of having the centre halves we had at the time? Because they almost would have made your job a little bit easier, I guess, wouldn't they? With that Barrett and Soji and Spencer Pry and all that. Yeah,
well, I think yes, like especially when Adam came in. Adam was brilliant in front of me. Loved playing in front of behind Adam. Spencer Pryor as well. Spence was experienced, playing at the highest level. Man City and Norwich, I think it was, came down, and he was still positioned. He didn't have the pace he used to have, but positional wise, he was still really good at rock. Effie come in as well and was a real tough player and hard to play against. And I imagine him for strikers was a nightmare to play against. So we had abundance of riches in that position. So for me, it was great. So like I said, organising them in front of me was an easy job because they're all experienced players, and they knew exactly what they were doing, and it was a case for obviously me just to mop up behind them and do my job when it was come to defending the goal from shots or defending my area from crosses, those sorts of things, and doing my part behind those guys.
Yeah, it was almost the perfect storm, really, wasn't it? Everything just seemed to click at the right time. We had so many people will say that when you've got a striker like Freddie up the other end that could take a tight game, take something out of nothing to nick us the goal, is that, yeah, but the reason we've kept it tight at the other end to get that one goal is because we were so solid at the back. We had a consistent back four, consistent keeper. It was just such a perfect time. It's
a great platform, isn't it, for whatever team you play in? If you're solid at the back and you kept clean sheets, and there was rarely any mistakes back there. Not just from myself, but from the centre halves, from the full backs. Even those guys, Shea Wilson, Lewis Hunt, Duncan Jupp, those guys that probably think, you talk about centre halves and goalkeeper, those guys have done a fantastic job as well. It's a fantastic platform to build from when you've got a solid, defensive unit that didn't give a lot away, and teams would really have to do something to score past us, whether it was a fantastic, bit of play or a set play or something. Teams really had to earn it. And then going forward, obviously, talk about people hitting peaks at the right time. He come in from Grays Athletics. We knew nothing about him, except he lived in a caravan, and was unbelievable, wasn't he? He was fantastic for us at the time, Freddie Eastwood. What a player. So you had that. You also had the boys in midfield, Kev, Mark Gowers, Mark Bentley's, Alan McCormick's, Nicky Bailey. These people. I apologise if I forget them. There's been so many. Fantastic players that we, at the right time, were hitting peaks and performing. And again, we're all on a bit of a crest of a wave. It's hard to put your finger on it, why it's working. But it just was. I just think we were all in a good place and performing at a high level.
It's amazing that, because obviously you'd love to replicate it all the time, but when you can't actually put your finger on why it's happening, it's difficult to do it. Because I think nowadays it becomes very forced for a lot of clubs, and it's like, no, but then and then taking it to the top level, you look at what Leicester did a couple of years ago. They'd probably say the same thing. It was just that wave of momentum, and it just happens.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, looking back to sort of the levels that I've gone on to achieve, and the people I've worked with, and training, and the methodical approach to quite a lot of training sessions to games, the tactical stuff. No disrespect at the time to say, but we weren't really doing that. We were probably, a lot of the time playing small-sided games, and we were going into games where we know a lot about the opposition. We wouldn't constantly work on set plays, defending them or scoring them. We wouldn't work loads on team shape. We sort of, we did on a few occasions, but it wasn't religious. Like, again, a lot of the managers I work with, religious, but again, it was just it was a good environment. Steve and Brushy had built that environment. It was a great environment to be involved in, and sometimes that goes a long way. And like you say, sometimes it's a team spirit and that sort of thing that can help you achieve things. Like we say, you look at Leicester. It was, what do they play? They play 4-4-2 counter attack. They sat in. They sat in a low block. They let teams try and score, and when they turned the ball over, they just play it into the space to Jamie Vardy, and they won the Premier League and got into the Champions League doing that. And a lot of people you speak to that were in and around that said the same thing. It wasn't loads going on, but they had a great team spirit. They I think they were doing that under Nigel Pearson as well, and things come together at the right time. Everything aligned at the right time, and it was their time. And again, what a great story that was.
So yeah, a little while ago you mentioned about having to do something special to score past us. So we'll have to lead on to the Man United game, where
yeah.
that was, that was going to take something very special to beat you that night, wasn't it? Was that the best game of your career?
I remember in that game, I remember coming for a swinging, free kick, coming to the box, and it was the 88th minute. I remember taking on my 6-yard box, catching it, and then I looked up at the clock, and I actually thought, I could play this game all night. I'd love it to go on all night. It wasn't even getting to a point where I was desperate for the clock to run down. I sort of just thought I could just play this game all night. It felt great. Yeah, it was. I mean, people will say that to me. It was my best performance. I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily agree, because it's different when the ball's coming off the end of the boot of Cristiano Ronaldo or Wayne Rooney, and you're making saves. It seems a lot more glamorous than it is playing. No disrespect, they didn't play away at Preston or home to Preston the game before, and I had a good performance in that game. The week before, I think we played Coventry, and again had another good game against Coventry. But you're making saves from, you're not making saves from Cristiano Ronaldo, are you? You're not making saves from Wayne Rooney. So people will say that to me, but I think I thought I was fortunate enough to have performances of similar levels, but weren't against Manchester United, the biggest team in the world at the time.
Remember as well in the game after that when we obviously played Tottenham. You played well that night as well, and we get done by an offside goal.
Yeah, again, it was another great night. But it was something that I wanted. I wanted to be playing in those sort of places. I wanted to be playing against those sort of teams. And again, it was a similar game. I didn't want that one. I didn't want it to end. I was gutted. I was fuming when he scored Defoe, because obviously it was offside. But I wanted it to go to penalties because I fancied myself in penalties as well. I sort of thought I could, if it went to penalties, we'd win the game. And again, it was a good night for me personally. I had a lot of work to do that night, and I loved it. I enjoyed it. That's what I wanted. I wanted to constantly be under pressure. I wanted to constantly be tested. And like I said, it's different when Jermaine Defoe's, Berbatov's at the time, whoever else was playing at the time. When it's happening from these guys, people make a big fuss about it. The national papers made a big fuss. They constantly were ringing me after Man United. They're constantly ringing me after Tottenham. But I'm like, come down the route. We're still doing this sort of thing week in, week out. It's
come and watch me against Come and watch me the league game, basically.
Yeah. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way, but I felt like I was still performing like this, even in the league. In front of 10.
Oh yeah. I don't think supporters were shocked when you've had this amazing game against Man United, because by this point we've seen you do it for like 5-6 years at this time.
Yeah, it was like I say, it was a fantastic night. Obviously personally, but for the team and just for the football club. I mean, that's something that no one will ever forget. In the club's history, it was a fantastic night, and you don't realise at the time what you've just done. You don't realise what you've achieved. I know it was just a one-off cup game, but to beat that team was unbelievable. I think they went and beat Roma in the Champions League with a similar team, like 2-3 weeks later, 7-1.
Yeah.
So it was unreal. So it was just fantastic. It was a fantastic period of time. Not just for us, but for the fans as well. What a time for the fans it must have been. So we're just delighted to be part of it. But it was great. I always remember the night of Man United going out and warming up. So I always used to go out and warm up with my goalie coach Lee Turner. We used to go out quite early, and leading up to the game, I think they played Crew the game before, and they put the kids out. So leading up to the game, I remember doing an interview with a newspaper. I can't really remember who, and they were asking me about the team, and I was saying that for me, I'd love it if they put the big guns out. Whether they will or they won't, don't know. And I was out warming up, and I was doing some handling drills and some movement drills with Lee. and I didn't know the team at the time. I didn't know what team they'd put out. So I was out warming up, catching the ball, and they read our team out, and then they read theirs out. So as the name started reeling off, it started me and Leah looking at each other like, whoa, here we go. Like that. And we finished our set of 8 or 10 or whatever it was. And I remember he come up to me and he went, I think you might be busy tonight, Flavs. I was like, yeah, I think you're right, mate. Yeah. So, yeah, it was great going back in, and then we're ready to play them. It was fantastic. What a night.
Would you prefer them as a keeper to be like busier?
100%. I loved it. You know, if you could play those games every week, that's exactly what I wanted. And it's like I said to you then, even those games, Tottenham's and Man United games, I just didn't want them to finish. You know, regardless of the consequences on getting knocked out of a cup or losing the game or whatever, I didn't want them to end. You know, that was what I put my gloves on for when I was a kid at like 7 years old. Was to play in those sort of games and against these types of players. And I always liked it. I always, you know, even going up the leagues with Southend, and you'll go to these, you know, going up into League One and these big clubs that have dropped from Premier Leagues into League Ones, and going up into the Championship and going to these big grounds and playing against these teams. It was something that I relished it. I loved it. To a point when, you know, even when it got to a point where I think we dropped that down into League One and we're playing teams we were expected to be, I just a bit like, I want to play against these big teams. That's what I wanted. That's what really drove me on as a person and as a footballer.
Mm.
So you said there, obviously, like we eventually unfortunately get relegated and head back to League One, but do you think it's just a case of not being good enough as a team, or do you think we got unlucky, really?
Yeah, I don't think we were good enough. I think we were. There were certain things I think we could have probably invested a bit more on the playing side of it in that January, which we needed to. We needed to strengthen, which we didn't. And I think structurally we needed to be a bit more intelligent than what we were a little bit naive. And as you go up, you sort of need that. And I just felt we fell a bit short probably in that side of it. And that sometimes is the difference between the levels you go up. It's just those small details, but they make a massive difference the higher you go. And unfortunately, I think we were just a little bit naive, and probably the investment side of it. I think we needed to bring in a bit more strength and depth to probably stay up. Unfortunately, we didn't.
Yeah. Did you think personally though that you could play at that level?
Yeah, definitely. I felt that at that time, that was where I was at. Or that was my level. We came down and stayed the season at Southend and made the playoffs, but my intentions were I want to get back into the Championship with Southend, or I wanted to get there again. You know, I wanted it to be with Southend, but it just wasn't the case. We lost the playoffs and we got battered in the playoffs to be against a very good Doncaster side that were very, very good with and without the ball. They were very tactically very good, and you know, we fell ridiculously short that night, especially in the second leg against them.
Did it ever used to really frustrate you when people would comment on your height? Because we all know as supporters that you were like more than a very capable goalkeeper. Do you think that possibly, as I say, you got to the Championship, but do you think that held you back from getting even higher than that? Do you think people were put off by your height?
Yeah, because I was told as a kid at Southampton that they'd play me in the Premier League. You know, so I knew if I would have been blessed with that physical size, the height, not size necessarily, but height, then I would have probably had the opportunity at Southampton to have played in the Premier League. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie and try and be modest about it. Yeah, I think it did. I think it did hold me back from playing in the Premier League. And I think if had I been 6'2", 6'3", that I'd have had the opportunity. But unfortunately, I never did. You know, I measure 1 meter 80, which is 5 feet 11, which is, as a goalkeeper, isn't what people want. You know, if you're investing and you've got the opportunity to bring in a goalkeeper, you go for all this criteria on the goalkeeper, and it's always that size thing lets you down. So did it annoy me? Yeah, it did, because I felt that I was, as a player, good enough to play at that level, but to always be knocked back because of something that was out of my control was sometimes hard to swallow. You know, I think the fact is that whenever I was criticised, no one ever criticised me technically or tactically or anything. It was always the physical side of it. You know, people would say, "Oh, you kick a ball 100 mile an hour, he can't catch it." Well, I could. You shoot at me from 6 yards, I can make a great reaction save. If you want me to kick a ball 80 yards on someone's head, I could do that. Stick crosses in my box, I could come and deal with them. You know, but it was always, you're standing in that 8 foot by 8 yard rectangle. Not sure about that. You know, I don't know. So obviously at the time I was like, look at what I do. Look at what I do when I'm in there. You know, there's not a lot going wrong. There's a lot of positives, and I don't really make that many mistakes. But you know, what could I do? I couldn't really do a lot about it. So
yeah,
I had to sort of get on with it and work doubly hard to try and get to a level where I wanted to be, or where, you know, as high as I could possibly get.
So that after that Doncaster game in the playoffs, was your contract up then? Yeah,
my contract had run out, and this was probably a strange situation as well. The season was literally finishing, and I think it was Steve at the time come up and asked, you know, what my plans were. So I was like, well, are you willing to offer me something? You know, obviously, oh yeah, of course we will. I think it was 8 years for me. Again, like I said to you, I wanted to probably get back into the Championship, but I was also keen on staying because 2 more seasons I had 10 years at the club. So that was something that was appealing. And if the club would have invested on the playing side of it the season later, I would have probably signed. I would have probably stayed at the club. And I mean that, I would have probably stayed. So I mentioned this, you know, I mentioned obviously I wanted to get a couple of years. I wanted to take it to 10 years. I wanted some reassurances that the best players weren't going to leave, and we would get more players in to strengthen to get back into the Championship. I told them what I wanted to do, what I hoped the club would try and achieve, and then it was like, oh, okay, yeah, no problem. Yeah, that's not a problem. We'll get that sorted. So I was like, right, okay, no problem. I'm happy to resign. Didn't hear a thing. Didn't hear anything from the manager, the assistant, no one at the club, nothing. So the summer carried on, nothing. Then I eventually had spoken to Steve, and then he said to me that the chairman didn't want me to sign 2 years, which I was, for whatever reason, why not? So he just wanted to offer me 12 months. You know, after everything that I'd done at the club, I was really disappointed about that. Again, I said, look, for what I've done, I feel as though I deserve this. Then I went back and eventually rang the chairman personally, because I wasn't getting any straight answers. he said, no, that's not the issue. I'd be quite happy to offer you 2 years, but it's coming from someone else that doesn't want to give you 2 years. So I'm like, who's it coming from then? And then it was like, it was going back and forth then between the manager and him, and no one was giving me a straight answer. So I then eventually said, well, listen, we don't get this sorted, then I'm going to see what else is out there. And then I spoke to my agent, and he said the same thing. We were getting messed around by the club. So I said, well, just see what's out there. Within a day, come back and said, Hull will sign you, Crystal Palace will sign you. Okay, brilliant. 2 big clubs. Try getting back to Southend. Southend weren't budging. Okay, spoke to Crystal Palace. We spoke to Hull. And in the end, it was quite... I felt that Southend were pushing me to get me out, which was really disappointing. So I was very angry about it. And then when I left the club and signed at Crystal Palace, the club's stance was we offered Flavs a contract and he turned it down and left to go to a bigger club. And, then people were, leaving the club, that wasn't the case. It wasn't the case. I felt quite let down, to be honest with you, because after everything I'd achieved, I would have been quite happy to stay, but I had no other choice. I had to see what else was out there. Then the opportunity to go to a big club, Crystal Palace, came up. It matched what I wanted to achieve, and that was that. So it was really disappointing for them to come out and say that, because it was the old trick of let's offer him something that we know he's going to turn down. And that's what happens in football a lot. And the player gets made to look like the bad guy, but that ain't always the case.
Yeah.
It's not always the case, because they know you're not going to accept that. And then when you do go, they come out and say, because they know the backlash probably at the time, because I was quite a popular player there. So I knew the backlash would have come out if they would have just not offered me something. But I felt as though at the time the people at the club wanted me out for whatever reason. And lo and behold, when I left, I think 2 days later, they signed Steve Mildenhall. So, and again, I know a lot of people in football, and I knew that deal was being done while I was still at the club. So, like I said, it was disappointing, to be honest, but not something that I held a grudge about, because I was fortunate to stay at that level, and unfortunately Southend didn't. So it was probably was best for me. So
yeah, but it's strange. It's like, just be honest. This is like grown men dealing with grown men. Just be honest.
Yeah, and that's something that you ask for. It's like I said, players get the brunt of all of it, but sometimes these owners, these chairmen, they've got a lot to answer for as well. They get away with a lot of things, but sometimes you've got to look a bit deeper and know the real story behind a lot of things before you can start to criticise. Because, like I said, I would have stayed at Southend, had they would have done some small sort of budging here and there on a couple of things which weren't too particularly big, and it would have been done, like I said. But then obviously I left, a new goalkeeper come in on a bigger contract than I originally asked for. So there you go.
Yeah, classic that. We've done that quite a bit in the last sort of 3-4 years as well. And now look at us.
There's a recurring theme there, isn't there? There's someone involved in deals. So
sometimes it's better than the devil, isn't it? Sometimes the grass isn't always greener. I felt like, as you saw, I think as then I left, you actually see the profile of the team again, because I'm one of those sad people that analyses quite a lot. You see the team starts all becoming 6-foot odd giants, and you're losing that sort of, instead of getting a bit of a balance there of technical quality, it all went a bit, they wanted a big side, which hence made sense. When I went, a few other players went, and you looked at that Southend side, probably 6 months later, it was probably just a big side, which maybe that's what they wanted there.
I've not thought of it like that. When you say that, thinking back to it, we did sign quite a lot of 6 foot plus players back then, so it makes some sense.
It may have been a way that whoever thought that is the way to move forward, and that is the best way getting results in League One at the time, which isn't always the case. So, like I say, sometimes it's better the devil, and the grass isn't always as greener. But that was that, and disappointing that people thought that it was me leaving for money, and people saying I left for money or left for sold my soul, all this rubbish that I heard. That wasn't the case at all. That wasn't the case at all. I'd happily have stayed at Southend.
Yeah. So obviously, like you say, you moved on to Palace then. What was that like? Like you say, it's quite a big club, quite some big players back then. How was that?
Yeah, big. It was a huge jump in training. Even around the place, it was a big club. Some really experienced players there. Sean Derry's, Clint Hills, Danny Butterfield's, James Scowcroft. You had some players like young players coming through like Ben Watson, Victor Moses, Nathaniel Klein. These guys. So you're in and around that, which was great. Again, moving on from Southend in at Palace. This is the sort of circles you sort of want to be working in, Obviously, at the time I went in there, and Julian Speroni was the other goalkeeper with me at times. There was Scott Flinders, there was another one. So I went in, and it was out of me and Julian Speroni at the time, and I didn't realise how good he actually was, but I found out pretty quickly.
He's my mate of mine's a Palace fan, and he said he's probably his favourite player in the last 15 years. And he said he was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I think when I went and spoke with Neil Warnock, he was a bit sneaky, to be honest with me, because he was like saying, I like my goalkeeper. I'm not a massive one on massive goalkeepers. I find a big goalie's quite clumsy, and I like him a bit. And I like you. I even spoke to my chairman about you at Sheffield United, about trying to get you in at Sheffield United with me. I think before Paddy Kenny went there. So he was saying all this, and he was like saying, yeah, we've got Julian Speroni here, and he might find it difficult that when you come in the door, so it'll be a good fight between you both. And so I was like, oh, okay, this sounds good. This sounds, again, really good club. I think they just missed out on the Premier League the season before in the playoffs. Well, great, yeah. And then when we went into pre-season, like I said to you before, obviously knew Julian was a good goalie, but I didn't realise how good he was. But I had no problem with that. I liked it. I liked the challenge, and still felt that, I could have still I still could have played, and it would bring me on. And I had that perception of Julian that he would be very punching everything and very sort of loose with his goalkeeping, and that was completely the other way around. The guy never made a mistake. He had the tendencies of like an English goalkeeper. He was quick, he was agile, he was dynamic, he was powerful. He was fantastic. And to boot, he was the nicest guy you'd ever meet. So it was hard not to not like him.
Yeah.
He was so nice. I loved him. He was brilliant. So it was a huge challenge. And I didn't realise how highly regarded he was with the fans. He was a bit similar to myself at Southend. And he was like that at Crystal Palace. So even when in the pre-season games, I would be playing, it was a bit funny. Used to get a little bit of stick sometimes from a couple of fans, because they obviously thought that highly of Julian. They didn't want someone trying to come in and take his place. And I found it really strange. And it was then it got quite clear. I think we played a couple of Premier League sides. I didn't play them. We played a couple of League Two and League One games, and I played in them. He played in the Premier League games, and then obviously I thought, hold on a minute, I'm not going to play here. And then I think we the first game of this, just building up to the first game of the season, I remember we played Swansea. I wasn't playing, and then I think Neil Warnock done an interview with the South London Press and came out and said he wouldn't swap Julian Speroni for Petr Cech. So I thought, what chance have I got then? That was that. And then, I found that quite difficult. Someone that played regularly for nearly 8 years, to be sort of cast aside and you're not the main man anymore was difficult. It was a real culture shock for me. So I had to just get my head down and carry on working there and an opportunity.
Yeah. Was that why you eventually, like you say, you went to Leeds and obviously you ended up at Oldham on loan? But is that why? Did you just want to get out and play?
Yeah, it was weird because Neil never had a goalkeeper on the bench.
No, he doesn't do that, does he? Yeah, no. He's weird like that.
Yeah, he didn't put one on the bench. I just felt I got to a point where I just felt lost there, to be honest with you. I felt a bit lost. I just moved from a house in Essex. I was living near Billericay when I was at Southend, and I wasn't playing at Palace. And my son, Aaron, at the time, was just getting to that age where he was nearly starting school. And I remember saying to my wife, should we just move home? Because I'm sort of in Essex, really. I'm not playing. I was in Essex because I was playing at Southend. Should we just go home? Because it took me an hour and 25 minutes from Southampton to get to Beckenham at the time. And it probably took me nearly an hour to get in from Essex. So I said, we should just go home. I could put my son in school and we'll see how we go. So off the pitch, I wasn't really getting involved too much. I was still good mates with, Sean Derry, Danny Butterfields, Clint Hills. These guys I still speak to now. But a lot of the social side of it, I wasn't really getting too involved in. And I just felt a little bit lost. And then, like I say, with Julian, become a cult hero there. So it was just getting really tough for me. I remember playing against Newcastle, Selhurst Park, and I think they scored after 2 minutes. I think Kevin Nolan literally one-on-one came through, scored, didn't really have much of a chance of making a save. And when I picked the ball out there, I was getting pelters from the fans, and it was just so difficult, And it was really tough. I remember going in against Cardiff, Leeds, these games, getting a bit of stick from my own fans before the game would even start. It was really strange, and I found it tough. So I felt a little bit of an outsider there and not really accepted. And the club went into administration, and basically we were told that anyone of any value would be sold, and anyone that any other club wanted via loan or transfer would go. I then got called in the office and said that Oldham wanted to take me on loan. At the time I was like, no, I don't want to go to Oldham on loan. And they were like, well, we need you to go because we're struggling. We weren't really getting paid. We were getting, wages were like first of the month. Some days we weren't getting paid till nearly the end of the month. So it was difficult. So it was a bit like, we need you to go on Oldham on loan. So I took a step back and thought, well, I'll be playing games. My contract was running out, so I would showcase myself again. Because if I didn't stay at Palace, obviously I needed something to back up to try and get a new deal somewhere else at the end of that season. So I then decided to take it. I then went to Oldham on loan and stayed there for 20 games. I think I must have played there 20 games.
Yeah. I remember Southend played against Oldham towards the end of that season. It's when we got relegated.
It was the game that relegated us.
Yeah, it was the game that relegated us. But what was that like for you as a player almost? Because seeing us, you took us to the Championship, where we then got relegated. But is there almost like a an annoyance at seeing that team get relegated, thinking all that hard work you put in, it's all been almost thrown away?
Is it Southend, you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was, in a way. Look, I loved Southend, and I'll always be grateful for what they did for me and the people there that gave me the opportunity. And it was a strange one because I never ended up going back there. I never had, with like I say, with the where I was, where the club was, I never ended up going back to Rootsall. Again, something in my head was always like, oh, I'd love to go. I'd love to get a cup game there, or something happens and I'd go back. I never ended up going back there. So I ended up going there, playing for Oldham, and then I think it was, I think we drew 2-2 with them. I think that was probably near the end of the season. I think that was nearly cemented them, and so yeah, I was gutted. I was because I had such a strong connection with the club, and just to see it sort of end up where it was really hard to take, really, because we built something unbelievable there. From when I went there, they were no disrespect, it was like 4,000 people in the ground. Yeah. We played League Two. We were getting beaten by some poor sides, and it wasn't really a lot to really sing about. And so to build it from the bottom to where we got it, I look at it again, moving, we'll maybe touch on that later, but, the club I went to, Bournemouth, to see what Bournemouth have done, I honestly believe that's what Southend would have been capable of achieving. Stadium, training ground, to new training ground, or do up the training ground. It had the potential. It was going in that direction. So to see it, where it went, like you said, that Oldham game, to see him getting relegated back to the bottom tier of, English football again was hard to take. And it was like I said, it was to play against Southend was something, again, I always wanted to do, but not under those sort of circumstances, really. So it was really sort of not one of those days. It was really a bit of an anticlimax, in all fairness.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Bournemouth, and just to make that comparison again with Southend, do you think maybe Southend, to start with anyway, set their stall out a little bit too ambitious to go with this massive 22,000 stadium, which we've never shown signs of having those numbers yet, potentially, but you look at what Bournemouth have done. It's been to scale for the size of the club as it is now. So do you think we were maybe sort of too ambitious?
I think at the time, I think it was hard to tell, because I remember that towards the end, especially it felt like last couple of seasons there, we were filling the ground out every week. It was spilling out from the sides. It was rocking. So you never really knew the potential or the fan base it could actually go on and have. Yeah, you're probably right. Would you get 22,000 in an all serious? Possibly not. But then if you stayed at that championship level, would it push from 10, 11, 12 to maybe 14, 15? Come a few away supporters, if you're doing well, puts it up to around 16, 17, 18,000. Who knows? And then the question is, can you kick on then to the Premier League? Then you might get it right with those numbers, like a Swansea. I think Swansea's ground 22,000. I remember playing against Swansea at the Vetchfield, and I don't know, there were about 7,000 people there. Fast forward however how many years, they filled that ground at the Liberty Stadium, 22,000. As we know, we played there, we got promoted there, and it was full. I've been there plenty of times, it's full. So, and then you've got obviously the next generation of supporters. You go into a new stadium, it's all nice. It's all, you got, like I say, infrastructure, training ground, these sorts of things attract better players. Better players, better team. More people want to come and see that. This this thing could grow. It just unfortunately just hasn't at the moment. So, fingers crossed somewhere down the line it does, because I genuinely and I honestly believe it. I say it to so many people that, being at Bournemouth, I could see the Southend could go that same way. And fingers crossed it will at some point.
Yeah, definitely. Like, so you spent, what was it, 4 years at Bournemouth after that?
Yeah, I went to Portsmouth. I went to Portsmouth for a season. They'd just been relegated from the Premier League and just lost in the FA Cup final, I think, to Chelsea. And David James he left and went to Bristol City. Yeah. So they needed a goalkeeper there, and financial problems. Probably what gave me the opportunity, because again, that was a club that was a big club, and it was sort of going well. It just dropped back into the Championship from the Premier League, and I spoke with the manager there at the time that wanted to get me in, but basically said to me, "Look, I'm not going to guarantee you're going to play. You might have to be the number 2 goalkeeper here." My brother played there, so I had connections there, and it took me back home. In all fairness, I was living in Southampton. Obviously, Southampton Portsmouth's a bit of a rivalry, but I've been able to, probably one of rare people that have been able to come over that because of my brother's connections. My Southampton connection it's not unheard of down there, but because of obviously my brother, I was able to overcome that. So it was tough, because you're born in Southampton, you play for Portsmouth, you got pelters, you got hammered, you're getting hammered. But luckily enough, because of that affiliation with my brother, and I knew a lot of people down there, a lot of players, people at the club, people supporters there. So it was okay. So when that was put to me, I just wanted to do it. And a little bit of it was a sentimental thing, because even though I was told that, I'm one of those that, all right, tell me I'm not going to play and I'll prove you I will. I'm that sort of person. So I was, you probably won't play a lot. You'd be on the bench if there's an injury or a loss of form there, you get the opportunity. But if it's all plain sailing and the goalkeeper's doing well, you're not going to play. Okay, I'll take that challenge on. So yeah, I went to Portsmouth for a season, and it was. I didn't get the opportunity, but it's still fantastic of me to just sort of for a little bit follow my brother's footsteps and be at that club again. Another club that I am, I think a lot of. So it was probably on the field, probably not great, but off it and then around it, it was good.
So yeah, from there you still get the opportunity to really sort of stay at home with just going and staying down at Bournemouth for a bit.
Yeah, and again, it's another club that I always used to enjoy playing against Bournemouth, and like I said, it was 25 minutes down the road from where I was, and it was an old Southend teammate. Lee Bradbury was manager, and then,
all right.
He took charge of the team at the time, and then I spoke to him towards the end of the season at Portsmouth, and he said he really wanted to bring me in. Would I be interested? I was, yeah, of course I would, definitely. Like I say, the season at Portsmouth was never really something that had longevity in it. The move there didn't have legs in it, really. And then the Bournemouth one came up, and I was delighted to go to Bournemouth, because, like I said again, and I'll keep saying it, but it was again a club that I really a lot of a strong connection with, and really enjoyed my time there. And it was strange going there straight away. It was tough, a bit similar to like Southend, really. Going there, it was a slow transition, and then obviously just accelerated rapidly to the point of getting into the Premier League.
So were you there at that point when you get to the Premier League?
Yeah, well, the first season I signed, I played 44 league games and cup games. Second season was under a new manager, and again, I don't think he wanted to play me again. Probably wanted to have a bigger one in. So in pre-season, I had a shoulder injury. I came and ended up punching a corner, and as I got over the top of a player, he grabbed my arm. So when I ended up bouncing off the back of him, pulled my shoulder out of the collarbone. It ripped all my muscles. So I had a shoulder injury anyway. Season had started, and we'd gone down to Portsmouth, and the goalkeeper that came in at the time then played, started making quite a few mistakes. Just about to go in for surgery, then manager came in, basically was begging me not to have surgery and to play, wanted me back in. He was sort of like, sorry, I know our relationships have been a bit frosty, but I can see I was wrong, and I can see how important you are. Will you play? Will you play? Contract was up at the end of the season. I said, well, give me another season. I'll do it, because the rehab time for my shoulder injury was 6 months. But I was told that I could probably play still, but eventually it would go. So I was like, well, I can't go and play 6 or 7 games and then get injured, and then I'm out for 6-7 months and I'm out of contract. So I need some reassurances. Didn't get it. So I said, I can't afford to take that risk. So instead, I had surgery and was out for that season. And during that season, that's when Eddie Howe came into the club, because that manager I was speaking about lost his job at the start after 10 games, I think it was. Then Eddie Howe come in. But I was luckily enough, I knew Eddie from the time as a kid, because we're similar ages, and I'd actually trained at Bournemouth while I was at Crystal Palace. While I was on loan at Oldham, I went down to Bournemouth to train, because story goes, when I signed on loan at Oldham, again, it was one of those where I was a bit like, don't know, I want to do it. I had a young family at the time. My son was only 4. I had a daughter on the way as well. Would mean I'd have to be up in Manchester most of the week. So I was a bit like, I remember saying to the manager, I said, look, can I have Mondays off? Because it's, down here. And he's like, yeah. And I said, look, I'll find somewhere to train on a Monday. So as things go on, he said to me, look, why don't you just train down there, start of the week, and come up here on Thursday and Friday? So cut a long story short, I knew the goalie coach at Bournemouth. So I asked him, could I come in and just train a couple of days? I won't get in the way of anything. I'll come in and just do the goalkeeping work with you, and then I'll go. I won't start jumping in. I have to play in the tactical stuff with the manager or the small sided game. We just need to tick over, basically. So Eddie and the goalie coach Neil Moss at the time were, yeah, great, come on down. It'd be great. So yeah, I ended up training with Bournemouth, but literally I did. He started using me in the tactical stuff as well, and it always kept asking me about, my situation as that season was gradually going to an end. I was out of contract, and he was saying to me, he was jokingly asking me, would I take these offers, which obviously at the time were really low, and we would joke about it. But it was strange that when he actually came in, signed, and he just he was like that. He said, I knew I'd eventually get you. He said, I'm just getting injured. So it was funny how that came back around. Obviously, he came back from Burnley, and I said,
funny old game.
Yeah. That's what I mean. It's sometimes swings in roundabouts a bit, and people you meet along the way. Sometimes, sometimes, like you say, you'll be good to people on your way up, because you might meet them on your way down, those sorts of things, So it was crazy. Then Eddie came in, and like I say, it was fantastic. The work we did in training, tactical knowledge, how we set the team up was fantastic again. And then you just knew you were onto something. unfortunately, one of my biggest regrets is I just seem to hit my period of injuries around that time. I just seemed every time I used to take 2 steps forward, I'd take 2 back. I'd come in pre-season. I played against Real Madrid in pre-season for Bournemouth, and then picked an injury up in the first championship game before Charlton, so I didn't play. Then I had to sit on the bench, and then goalie that played at the time got sent off after 20 odd minutes against Leeds. So I went on against Leeds, saved the penalty, put in a performance at Ellen Road, and after the game, Eddie said, "You're going to be playing. You're going to be starting the games now." During the game, I'd come and taken a cross, and was it Noel Hunt? Noel Hunt was a striker at the time.
Yeah.
Sort of getting involved now. The other one drove his knee into my quad, and I didn't really think anything of it at the time. But when the game finished and the adrenaline wasn't pumping, my quad was killing me. Anyway, cut a long story short, it split my quad muscle. I had a 3-inch tear there. So we were playing Millwall on the Saturday. I couldn't play. I had to have a plasma replacement injection, and I was out for 6 weeks. 6 weeks, and came back in. Then I got to a point again. I got back in, and we were just about to play Birmingham. And in training, the ball's moved now. As I was just about to catch a shot, the ball moved into the top of my thumb. Pushed my thumb all the way back and ripped all my ligaments in my hand. So they flew me out to Italy. I had to go to Rome to have an operation, which was another funny story. I ended up going out to Italy, no idea what was going on with an Italian doctor, and it was around about Christmas, and I went to the hotel and I had no information on anything. They just literally put me in a car to Heathrow. I stopped off at my house. I put a few clothes in a suitcase, and I was like saying to the doctor, "Doc, how long am I going to be out there for?" "Oh, not long." Okay. So I literally ends up going to Heathrow. I get on a plane to Rome. I get met by a liaison officer in Italy. This Italian woman, no idea. In a hotel. How long are you staying for? I don't know. How long am I booked in for? Is it we booked in for a week? I was like, am I? So I ended up going to a clinic in Rome, speaking to somebody. They then took me down to an operating theatre. So I was like, what? They stuck a needle in me. I was out. I woke up and I'm in a hospital in Italy, in Rome, on my own, like scratching my head thinking, what's going on here? So I ended up out in Rome for 5 days, just sitting in Rome. I ended up just going out sightseeing. So it was a great time, but like I said, sorry, I'm getting off track a bit here.
No, you can be in worse places. So
yeah. So, it just seemed to always seemed that something would happen, an injury would come up, and then eventually, I understood. The club then brought in a couple of goalkeepers, Lee Camp, who I work with now at Birmingham. Artur Boric then came in, and club was moving forward. Whenever I got back injured, it was good. Eddie would keep me involved. I'd been on the bench a few times. Actually come on against Derby, I think, in my last year there. Then when we got into the Premier League, because of the 25-man rule, it was going to be hard to keep there in a capacity. So that's when, beginning of what we were talking about. Then we were talking maybe coaching. I was 30, 37, 30, 38 at the time. So that's where that's how that sort of ended there at Bournemouth. So, but like I say, it was fantastic, and to be part of that acceleration of that football club was fantastic.
Yeah.
So yeah, just as like we'll start to wind it down. But just we'll move back to sort of where you are now. How obviously we had this lockdown. You've been able to get back in to do some training. How's that training been since you've gone back?
Yeah, it's been challenging because you've got to think of social distancing. So it has been quite challenging. The first week going back in, I thought I would just try and put like a mini pre-season down for the goalkeepers. So to start off with, first I'm thinking, right, I'm going to put technical sessions on, so it's going to be a lot of the ball, a lot of the goalkeeper feeling the ball, different sort of different service movements, and then you're jotting bits down. I'm going through, I film all my training sessions. I'm going back some of my sessions I've filmed, and then I'm thinking, Christ, I can't do that because they're quite close to each other, so I can't do that. So then you're just constantly having to change things. So that's been challenging. But I've sort of just basically tried putting a technical and conditioning sort of couple of weeks in to get them used to feeling the ball, get them fit again. Because it's been long, the time they've had out since the lockdown has been longer than the off season we would have had.
Yeah.
So, and then trying to get them up to speed within, I think we're looking at maybe the week from this next Saturday, our game's starting again. So it's trying to get them up to speed as quickly as possible without obviously worrying about injuries as well. So,
yeah.
But they're in a good place. They look sharp and they're fit. So.
Was the sort of mood pretty good? No one kind of a bit wary about coming back?
Not that I know of. When obviously going back in, I have a goalkeeping area at the training ground, and I'm sort of left to organise the goalkeepers, and we're sort of over there. Everyone else is over here, so we're sort of left on our own. So for the first,
you're kind of isolated anyway.
Yeah. It's great. I never had to deal with any of that. I just over there in the cage on my own, so no one really bothered me. So we were sort of, you're sort of isolated because you're not integrating with the squad. It's not like a normal working day where you work with the goalkeepers and they'd integrate with the squad and maybe do something tactically or play small-sided games. It was just, train with me. And then it was the way that the protocol is not to come in contact with anyone else other than my group. So it'd be basically, you wouldn't really speak a lot to the staff. I would basically go off, make sure that they followed the procedure, then leaving the training ground, and then leaving the training ground, I had to do my own procedure and then close the gates on the way out, and I had to go plan my sessions, design my sessions at home. And as you can see with my daughter coming, it's difficult because I'm sitting at my desk trying to design training sessions to benefit the goalkeepers. And normally I'm doing it in my office at the training ground, so it's that's been challenging. But we're sort of getting into near contact training now. Still, obviously, with the social distancing and all the regulations that we've all got to follow. So we're gradually sort of getting there, but it is difficult. It is challenging, but like I said, it is how it is. And again, it's something that's it's always good to be challenged, and it's just another obstacle that we got to try and get over.
Yeah. Obviously, before all this lockdown happened, you've obviously seen or at least heard the shambles that's been Southend this season. But we obviously tried to get one of your keepers on emergency loan, didn't we? But we couldn't get it. Is that right?
Yeah.
Obviously, Argo, whatever it was at the time.
Yeah. That would have been Connell Truman. It was close. It was close, but I think it was probably, it would have been good for Connell to have gone to Southend to play games, but it was, I think, when we had to really think about it, we thought as a club, the way things, we probably had to keep him with us. Like I said, if that opportunity arises again, I'll be the first to tell him to go and play. And say great club, great supporters, and hopefully if that comes up for him again, he could go there.
Yeah. Just on that, but from your point of view, obviously we're playing a lot of kids this year. Would that be a good thing for the keeper, sort of going in front of an inexperienced back four, or not?
I would just tell him to embrace it. And if there is an experienced back four or a young back four, step up to the plate and organise them and show them the right direction. And if you're going to get into you'll start doing your nuts and bolts of goalkeeping. Like I say, you'll probably get put in situations that you probably wouldn't with more experience, probably better players. But you have to go through this sometimes to come out the other side. You have to play in these things at a time. It frustrates you, but you come out of it a better goalkeeper for it, a better player for it. And you start to realise as well, is don't start getting too involved in some things that are going on. Just concentrate on your job, and the team will benefit from you performing and doing your job well. Because sometimes you can go and, I've done it myself, play in front of inexperienced defenders, and they're doing things and you get frustrated. So as a goalkeeper, you start doing things, you start coming out for crosses that you shouldn't. You start trying to mop up behind the back four and defend that space when sometimes you would just drop off and someone would head it back or play it back to you, or they would deal with it, and you start doing things you wouldn't normally do. So these things as a young goalkeeper is good to learn, and the best way of learning is playing. So it would be, for me, I'll be the first one to go in there and earn stripes, and if it needs organising, you'd be the one to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So just before we do go then, what would you say was your best game for Southend?
There's a lot to pick from.
Yeah, it's tough. But, I suppose the League One season, I won the PFA League One Player of the Year. That was because of a lot of good performances in the games. Championship season was great as well because we were under the cosh quite a lot that season, so I had quite a lot of games where I had quite a lot to do. I'd probably have to say Manchester United, or probably even the Tottenham 1-0 defeat at White Hart Lane would probably be up there, because like I said, it's you're doing it against those sorts of players. As we've gone to see, probably the best player in the world, or one of the best players we'll ever see. So I'd probably say those, Manchester United maybe, or Tottenham Hotspur.
Yeah. Cheers, mate. Anyway, really appreciate it.
Cheers, mate.
No problem. I've enjoyed it. I appreciate you letting me come on. Sorry, I've gone on a little bit, but
no, brilliant.
It's always good to have a little trip down memory lane as well, when it with some of these.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it was the best years of my career. Loved my time there, and hopefully one day I'm able to go back. I actually did play in a charity game there.
Yeah, we was there.
Yeah, last season. So it'd be good. One day, hopefully, I can go back there and show a bit of appreciation to everyone, because, like I said, I never got the opportunity to go back there as a player when I left there. Like I said, it'd be great if that could happen one day. Like I said, it was the best years of my career, and loved it. Loved the supporters and the people there. So,
come back as a goalie coach.
You never know.
As a goalie.
Yeah. I can still do it. I'm nearly 43. I still think I've got a bit to offer. So.
Top man. Honestly, mate, really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Cheers,
Thanks for
I know you. I know you spoke to Chris Phillips a little while ago. We were putting the stuff out on Twitter like a couple of months ago of all the footage from that League One season. If you haven't got any of that, I can send you all that across, all your highlights from that.
Yeah. That'd be great. Yeah, it's always it's different because back then you didn't really have any of that. You know, you'd watch probably clips on, on the Sky Sports or something like that. We don't really get the opportunity to get that footage. So yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah. No, we'll send something across.
Show my goalkeepers how it's done.
Oh dear. Right, yeah. Anyway, cheers, Sam. I really appreciate it. Top man.
Man. Great stuff.
Mate.
Lovely. All the best, mate.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
See you, mate.